My goodness, this is an intense film for you, Clayne. Was there something about Joe or about the script or about director and writer Robert Machin that really made you want to be a part of this one?
You know, when I turned 40, I was at a bit of a crossroads of kind of what I was going to do creatively and if I was going to continue to be an actor or not. And when I went to go make The Killing of Two Lovers, that was really in an effort to one, could I do this without necessarily having to be in the Hollywood system necessarily? Like if we just wanted to separate and go make a little film, could we find success? But also, it was really, I kind of wanted to play a character that was unlike anything I'd ever played before. Um, and not only just from a vulnerability side, which was really key, especially with David in The Killing of Two Lovers, but also just being a family man. And again, it was just something that typically I would not be cast as. And then when we had the success, and Robert is such a technical guy, like the camera movement and placement is so important to him because he's a photographer, right? He's a photography professor at BYU. Um, it was just extremely freeing for me to kind of create this performance and being the investor. It allowed me to kind of do what I wanted to do creatively for the first time. And I just wanted to see if I even wanted to act anymore. So once we had success with that, COVID hit right after we launched that film. I think it was at Sundance 2020, so a couple of months before COVID. And it was coming out, and we had a really nice release. And I think we were all sitting at home. And, me personally, I was like, I'm day drinking and watching Netflix for the most part. I was like, I'm ready to go be creative and kind of accomplish something on that side of my life. And I called everybody up and I said, hey, is anyone interested? Do you guys want to try to make a movie? I know it's scary for a lot of people right now. And, but if we came to Bama and we're just in the woods, that might be the safest place to be. Right. And Robert and I had been developing this story specifically with HBO as a limited miniseries, or limited series, rather, is what it's called now. And this was basically the first episode. And once again, COVID hit and everyone shut down, I picked up the material and I was looking at it and I thought maybe there's enough here for a beginning, middle, and end to a little film. And it seemed like the perfect thing to shoot during COVID as it relates to small in scale, few cast members. Um, and yeah, and I felt that more so than ever when we were all very uncertain of the trajectory of the human race and this country and the planet in general. I think we were all kind of unsure of what was going to happen next. And maybe we were a little bit questioning what would we do in a survival situation? What would we do if there were no grocery stores open and so forth? And I think Joe is kind of faced with that when he moves to his small town. And also the idea of wanting to be, I think Joe comes from an urban environment and he moves to this rural town, and the definition of what it means to be a man is very different in this small town as it is where he was born and raised. And I thought that was really interesting to explore.
Well, there's such a great cast to this. How involved were you then in selecting your co-stars?
Well, that's part of why I want to pay for these movies, so I can control those kind of things. I think that's why I wanted Seppi and Chris Coy and The Killing of Two Lovers. I wanted to work with those guys so bad, and I'd worked with Chris on Lethal Weapon and just thought he was an extraordinary talent. And Seppi, I was just beginning to be aware of her work. It was before the L Word, but I had a casting director friend of mine who cast me in Rectify, who she's like, you got to see this girl. So when we did The Killing of Two Lovers, I'd met Hillary Burton doing Lethal, and her, and she's married to Jeff, and like we all just became really good buddies because we have kids, and they were kind of similar ages, and I worked with Jordana on Lethal, so. And I just love, I loved her, and I loved her work ethic and the way she approached her work and characters. And so, yeah, I called those guys up and I was like, hey, are you as bored as I am? And I think Jeff was enjoying it because he was working so hard on Walking Dead for so many seasons. But I was able to kind of talk him into coming to Bama and make this little movie.
Well, everyone plays such an interesting role. Why was it so important, though, for Joe to go out right that moment to hunt? Is there something that really motivates him that specific minute? I mean, his wife is saying to him, you don't have to go out. You can, and everyone's like, you don't have to go out the second. You don't have to, so what's got to be in his bonnet to go out right that minute?
Okay, so I play Joe from a place of like a 12-year-old, okay, who has wanted to do something and everyone keeps saying no, right? To where finally he's like, well, then fine, I'm going to do it myself. Okay, I'm going to go by myself. So I think when we find Joe, he's been planning this for quite some time. And he clearly went and bought himself a new outfit. He has he has shaved himself a mustache out of this beard that he's been growing, and he's pretty dang proud of himself. And I think the idea of, again, being a man in this town where he's surrounded by guys that are maybe a little more rough and tumbling than he's ever been, I think he likes the idea of being this guy. And there's no stopping him that day. He's going to go out there, and like he says, I'm going to be out there all day, and he can't wait. And I think it's yes, it's he wants to kill a deer. Yes, he wants to be self-reliant, but he also, I think he's curious about this environment that he finds himself in, and is he going to be able to fit in, or is he always going to be a fish out of water?
Well, every scene is edge of your seat watching. Was there a particular one that you found the most challenging for you filming wise, or maybe one that you were surprised to see on script and how it came to life when you were actually filming it?
The beauty of working with Robert is that he writes very sparse material. So there's a lot of room for the actor to interpret what it is that he or she is going to do in the scene. Um, a majority of those scenes of Joe in the woods were not scripted. They were things that we kind of added at the last minute, like walking through the woods, swinging the gun, or the deer stand, which we had, and that's part of because Robert wrote this script for Utah, and Utah geographically is just much different as it relates to the landscape and the vegetation. So in Utah, you can literally track a deer and shoot it from sometimes 300-400 yards away. Um, Here in Alabama, you're about 30 yards away because the forest is so thick. You usually just sit in a deer stand and wait until a little deer comes out, and then you take your shot. So we had to make a lot of those adjustments, which kind of happened on the fly because we were shooting in Utah until 2 weeks before production. So a really quick shift. And so, yeah, a lot of that was on the fly. But to answer your question, the most difficult scene to shoot was post accident at the truck. That was difficult because you don't want it to be melodramatic, but you also want it to be honest to as it relates to reflecting those true emotions in that moment. And what were those true emotions? Was it guilt? Was it fear of losing everything he knows? Selfish, unselfish? That was very tough, and we only did one take of that. Just because when I did it, it was a bit exhausting, and you feel a bit silly. Then going back to one and doing it again, and then again and again. So I did it that one time that day, and I was like, let's just take a break. Let's go shoot this other stuff that we have on the property. And then we'll revisit this scene maybe tomorrow. And we'd kind of scheduled it out that maybe I could do a take or two for like 2 or 3 days until we really got it right. But there was something about that first take that seemed quite immature, but genuine at the same time. And I think that was I think that reflected how he was feeling in that moment, honestly. And but it was super hard to shoot for sure.
Well, how did you shake off then a long day of filming such an intense role?
Well, when look, when I say that my wife and I did everything on this film. I mean, outside of, and Bo Clancy, my partner, and John Foss, these guys were super helpful with all the production and paperwork. But, I mean, my wife and I were buying wardrobe, we're scheduling cars, flights, food, making sure everybody's eating 3 times a day. It was COVID, so we had people in Airbnbs kind of in their groups, like the film department and or the camera department in one group, and hair and makeup, and some producers in another house. And we didn't want people going out, so my wife and I are dropping off supplies like toothpaste and deodorant. And so on jobs like that, you're wearing so many different hats. You don't really decompress or even allow it to absorb until kind of a week after it's all said and done and the dust is settled. Then you kind of sit back, and I think that's when you start to again reflect, and then maybe kind of process, and you're able to shed it away. But we're up at 5 a.m. and going to bed at probably 1 a.m., every night for however many weeks it took us, 2 or 3 weeks to shoot this. So it was, as my grandfather used to say, assholes and elbows.
What do you think it is then about the integrity of Joe Chambers, or what do you hope lingers with the audience after watching this one?
I think as someone who's played a lot of, just from the weapons aspect of it, I think it's interesting that a lot of the times that when we see guns in movies or television, in a negative way, it's a bad guy with a gun and he has ill intentions. I thought it was important to show that, and I grew up with guns. I was given a rifle at 12 years old. I come from a military background. I own guns now, and there's a great respect that I have for those firearms. And I just think they're incredible machines, But I also think that there's a respect and a knowledge that has to go with that. And in film, rarely do you see someone with really good intentions, even honorable, because he's wanting to provide for his family, that without the proper training, these are deadly, scary weapons, right, of war at times. And I just thought it was important to kind of start the film where you feel like, uh-oh, maybe this idiot is going to get in, he's going to get hurt out here by somebody's going to hurt him. He's where he shouldn't be. There's a monster, or there's this thing. We don't, now in cinema, we're not sure what's going to come out of the woods. And then as the film unfolds, you realize that Joe is in fact the monster in this story. And it's because of his ignorance, and his ego of kind of wanting to belong. Again, albeit that the intention is in his heart is in the right place, wanting to provide. So that was important. And then again, as I spoke before, I think men in general are questioning, what does it mean to be a man? We grew up with one way of it being really instilled in us, how to treat women and how to work hard and how to take care of certain parts of your life and to provide in a certain way. And that was being a man. And now it's kind of been turned on its head. So I think the pendulum has swung in such opposite directions, at least for men of my generation. I'll be 45 in April. And I think we're all trying to find that balance, of being a protector at times. How can I be a lion and a lamb? And it's very exciting to be in this time of awareness, and us all kind of learn and have empathy for everyone, and kind of again redefining that. And Joe's experience seemed like that perfect opportunity.
What's next for you then? Have you been busy working on more personal projects or more on-screen projects lately?
A little bit of both, because Bo Clancy, who I mentioned, who helped me produce this film, he's a friend who I've known for over 20 years. And we just had such a wonderful time. We immediately went and made another film right after Joseph Chambers called Best Clowns. That film was bought by 1091 Pictures, who also did What We Do in the Shadows. And it's in that similar kind of vein. It's a mockumentary about a young lady who's fighting depression and wants to be honored as the best clown in America. Thomas Lennon and Robin Lively are in the film. It's just a fantastic. Oh, Thomas Lennon again, Lethal Weapon. The job that keeps on giving. Like this thing that it kind of ended on a little unfortunate, has turned out to be just a treasure chest of incredible talent, whether it's from the makeup artist TC, who has worked on all these films with us. It's been amazing. So we have that film that comes out this summer. And then in the fall, I did a film with 101 Studios and Paramount Plus. Brian Hagelin, the incredible writer of LA Confidential and Mystic River. It's his story with Tommy Lee Jones and Ben Foster. So, and Jenna Ortega, who is just incredible. And Wednesday, we're all just, I mean, we knew she was special, but then you watch that show and you just really get a clear understanding of how talented that young lady really is. And yeah, so I'm excited about that project. And then a couple of things I can't talk about that I'm super excited about next year.
Well, what would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the wonderful work you do on our screens?
Uh, Look, anytime people like what I do outside of my mom, is really, really awesome and heartwarming. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of social media. I don't like my phone. I'd like to throw it in the lake a majority of the time, but what an outlet to I think it's such an incredible connection that we've never had before as an entertainer. That connective tissue with the audience and fans, and it. I've always done what I've done because it just made me feel good, and I loved it. Kind of like raising a family or living on my farm. It brings me joy, but to share that joy with other people is just really special. So to anyone that appreciates what I do, I'm just super grateful for that support and it allowing me to do what I do.